Good day, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of Primetime Live here on Jess FM and Jess TV. Of course, being September the 11th, we're going to start off the show with a short clip from the memorial, the 9/11 memorial that took place at the Peace Arch border crossing today. For those unfamiliar with the Peace Arch border crossing, it's actually a park, and it's one of the few international parks in the world. The park is split. Half of it is in Blaine, Washington, while the other half of the park is in Surrey, British Columbia. The border crossing, Peace Arch border crossing that is, also lays within the park boundaries. Throughout the park, you do not need a visa or any ID. You just go to the park and you enjoy it on either side, the Canadian or American side. And during COVID, actually, it was a place to meet up with relatives from the US or from Canada on both sides because, again, it's an international park. Now, of course, today there was a very special memorial event for the victims and the first responders in the park. And we also were fortunate enough to have a New York Fire Department representative, a firefighter who was actually a rookie back during 9/11 and was on shift, the night shift. So he came on after the events happened during the day, but he was a part of the rescue and the recovery teams that responded to the World Trade Center in New York City. Now, of course, we know that this is the 24th anniversary, a very solemn time, but to see the amount of people that turned up to honor the victims and the first responders was very uplifting. The event started off actually with several motorcycle clubs that get together at one of the local casinos in Delta, British Columbia. And then on the other side, groups get together at another location and then they do a group breakfast, and then they ride to the park and come together in unity from both sides of the border. There's also the joining of the fire departments from both sides of the border, representatives from law enforcement agencies, again, on both sides of the border. And as I said, we had a representative from the New York Fire Department who actually gave a very emotional and very powerful speech today as well, recalling what he experienced on 9/11 in New York City. So I thought that we would just play a bit of a clip here from the band that the military, or the police band, and others that were in the procession or the rally and the event to play Amazing Grace. There was a lot to cover, but we'll go with this video for tonight. If you want to see more, then of course we will have more posted later about the event. So again, that was the event at the Peace Arch border crossing today in Blaine, Washington, and Surrey, British Columbia. Thank you to all of those who participated and were in attendance. The events, of course, are being marked, or there are events marking the date around the world, but especially throughout Canada and the United States. As we continue to look at what we've learned and the lessons from 9/11, as well as changes in the world in terms of security and partnerships, cooperation, and much more. Of course, this is one of the benefits of 9/11 is the unity of the world when it comes to security. However, over the last year, of course, or at least the last 9 months, we've seen a lot of change that's impacted both across the border for Canadians and Americans, as well as the rest of the world when it comes to security, cooperation, and, of course, the military support. With that said, of course, this is a real sign of unity that even though there may be problems with the geopolitics, with trade and other issues, that Canadians and Americans still stand shoulder to shoulder when it comes to the important things such as remembering the lives lost on 9/11 and those who responded in kind, whether that was from the shores of Newfoundland to the ice fields of the Arctic, right through to, of course, Vancouver. I know that on 9/11, when things happened, I was working diligently, volunteering to find places for people to sleep, coordinating between volunteers opening their doors for people who were on flights diverted to Vancouver International Airport. And it was just an amazing show of support by people in Vancouver and across Canada to welcome our American neighbors and others who had no plans on visiting our country. But of course, in times of trouble, as we have throughout history, Canada and the US stand shoulder to shoulder, and I believe that we will continue to do so in the future. As I said, we may have some differences when it comes to the politics and trade right now, but overall, I think that it is just a bump in the road for a relationship that we have, just as we have over generations with other presidents, prime ministers, and so forth. It's just a part of being family, is that you have disagreements and you work them out and you move forward in life. And that is, again, one of the important factors of where we're at now. Of course, with that said, we are going to continue on with the show now, and we're going to take a look at some top headlines, both from, of course, Lethbridge and across Canada and around the world. As we do so, don't forget that our phone lines are open for you to call in. You can share your thoughts on 9/11. You can share your opinions on any of the topics or news stories that we cover, or you can just phone in and share your recipe for Grandma's great chocolate chip cookies, because I love cookies. But in any event, you can call in either via telephone or on WhatsApp, and the number for you to call in is 1-368-997-6741. So if you want to call in and share your opinions on anything or just talk about what's happening in life, by all means, you're more than welcome to do that as well. As we continue on, as I said, we are looking at various topics right now, and I apologize, I've just lost my one screen, so bear with me while I get that back up, and we will go from there. Following, of course, our news headlines, we will be talking about AI and the advantages and disadvantages, as well as avoiding liabilities when it comes to introducing AI into your business and your workday. There are the good, the bad, and the ugly when it comes to AI. But again, I always try to remind people that it's important that you utilize it as a tool, as an assistant to the workers or the staff, employees, management, whatever the case is. But it is not to be a replacement, as that is where you'll find yourself in very precarious situations, as we will discuss. But let's go back to our headlines right now. And again, thank you to our sponsor again this week, Carry Movers Limited, Western Canada's favorite local and long distance moving company, moving long distance across Western Canada and locally within Metro Vancouver and the Fraser Valley. You can find them online at www.carrymovers.com. Thanks again for their sponsorship as we move on here. Now, we're looking at a city in shock. Yes, an 80-year-old man fights for his life. The story behind a stolen bicycle in a moment of violence that has a community asking why. Ottawa's $60 billion gamble. The Prime Minister is unveiling plans to build Canada's future. But is he leaving its most powerful industry behind? And the door closes as Canada courts new investment. It's turning away foreign workers and students in record numbers. We investigate this seismic shift in Canadian immigration. As a nation, we also, as I said, remember 24 years later after the towers fell, America pauses to honor the lost, but so did we here in Canada. Now, in a country divided, can the memory of and message of unity still bring the nation back together? I believe that it can, and I hope that it will. Now, we begin tonight in Lethbridge, Alberta, of course, with a story that illustrates a terrifying truth of modern life, and that is how quickly the ordinary can become the unthinkable. It's a story of a bicycle theft and a confrontation with following up with a single act of violence that has left an 80-year-old man clinging to life. A 34-year-old man is in custody facing consequences of a decision that took only a second to make, but will last a lifetime. Now, it happened in the middle of the day around noon on Wednesday in a place familiar to everyone in the city, the 1200 block of 2A Avenue North. An 80-year-old man walked out of a business to find his bicycle gone. What happened next is a tragedy of disproportionate consequence. He saw a man with his bike and decided to confront him. That confrontation, police say, turned into a physical altercation. Now, keep in mind that this victim is 80 years old. The suspect, a man of 46 years, his junior, allegedly threw a single punch. The blow knocked the senior backwards, his head striking the hard pavement. The suspect then fled the scene. The result of that fall was catastrophic. The victim sustained life-threatening injuries, and he was rushed to Chinook Regional Hospital in Lethbridge, but his condition was so severe, he was airlifted to Foothills Medical Center in Calgary, where tonight he remains in critical condition. The incident highlights a chilling vulnerability, particularly for seniors. A dispute over a piece of property, a common urban crime, escalated in an instant to a potential homicide. It demonstrates the razor-thin line that can exist between a minor conflict and a life-altering event. Now, as the victim was being flown to Calgary, an intensive police investigation was already underway. As the police searched on the ground in Lethbridge, witnesses had provided investigators with images of the suspect, and officers quickly identified him. Lethbridge police deployed what they call extensive police resources to track him down. Again, one of the benefits of everyone having cell phones these days. But then the story took another turn. Around 8 p.m. Wednesday, 8 hours after the assault, the 34-year-old suspect called the police dispatch himself. He wanted to turn himself in. He was arrested shortly after at a Northside home without incident. That phone call adds a layer of complex humanity to an otherwise brutal crime. It raises the question about what transpired in those 8 hours between the punch and the surrender. Was it a crisis of conscience, the pressure of a citywide manhunt, or the weight of what he had done? Police say charges are pending and the investigation is ongoing at this time. Now, while police and doctors deal with the immediate and tragic consequences of street-level violence, city officials in Lethbridge are waging a different kind of battle. A proactive, multi-million-dollar fight to secure the city's very lifeline, its water. Now, this is taking a look at securing the flow in Lethbridge's $67 million bet on the future. It's a story about the invisible infrastructure that keeps the city alive. For years, Lethbridge has been running on a water treatment system with critical components that are more than 40 years old. On the hottest summer days, the plant operates at over 90% of its total capacity. The risk is enormous. A single major failure could cripple the entire water supply for over 130,000 people in Lethbridge and 10 surrounding municipalities. Now, the city is making a massive bet to prevent that catastrophic event and unlock its economic future. When we look at the city of Lethbridge, they have approved a $67.2 million upgrade to the water treatment plant. This is phase one of a long-term expansion plan, and the funding supported by a $9.2 million grant from the province will go towards two critical projects: building a new high-capacity water clarifier to provide crucial backup and overhauling the plant's aging electrical systems, which we have discussed in previous shows. Now, when we look at the total investment, as I said, it's about $67.2 million. The current daily capacity is 150 million liters, but that will upgrade. With phase one, it'll reach 180 million liters, and future capacity of maximum goal down the road will be 250 million liters. So again, a huge opportunity for growth and expansion and supporting the key infrastructure of water delivery in the community. Now, one of the key drivers, of course, is that it will also help to support the agri-food and regional development in the area. Joel Sanchez, the city's director of infrastructure services, says the new clarifier is about redundancy. If one of the old units fails at peak summer demand, the city could be forced into a dramatic and drastic water rationing situation, which they want to avoid. This project is essentially an insurance policy against that scenario. But this isn't just a story about fixing old pipes, it's about economic enablement. Lethbridge has ambitious economic development strategy plans focused on growing its agri-food and agribusiness sectors. With that, of course, they need the water capacity. Companies like Richardson International, which operates an oil seed processing plant in the city, have stated that a reliable water supply is essential to the continuity of their operations. Without more water, the city's economic growth is effectively capped, and this $67.2 million investment isn't just a maintenance cost, it's the key to unlocking the region's future prosperity, supporting new jobs and, of course, new industry. In an era often defined by reactive crisis management, Lethbridge Plan stands out as an example of a proactive governance, and it's also faced with dual threats of aging infrastructure and growing concerns over drought in southern Alberta. The city is acting before a catastrophe strikes, and remarkably, due to long-term financial planning, officials say the phase of the project will be completed without any increase to residential water rates. Construction is set to begin this month with a target completion date of December 2027. So by that time, I would have guessed that you'll have ice cubes going through the pipes, given those cold winters. Just kidding, folks. Now, as a quick look at other police news from Lethbridge tonight, a high-risk incident in the city's west side ended peacefully yesterday. Police say a 26-year-old woman, reportedly armed with a knife, broke the glass in a door and then barricaded herself inside of her home on Mount Sundial Court. Neighbors were told to shelter in place, and the tactical team was deployed. After several hours, the woman surrendered and was taken into custody without incident. Katie Jane Sori faces charges, including possession of an offensive weapon and resisting police officers. Coming up after this quick sponsor announcement, Prime Minister Mark Carney rolls out a $60 billion national building plan. We'll show you what's on the list and what's conspicuously missing. And later, the door slams shut. Why Canada is suddenly turning away foreign workers and students that we once courted. Once again, folks, thank you to Carry Movers, our episode sponsor. Once again, Carry Movers is your top choice for long-distance moves throughout Western Canada or for local moves within the Lower Mainland and Fraser Valley areas of British Columbia. You can find them online at www.carrymovers.com. That's K-A-R-Y movers.com for all of your long-distance needs or moving needs within Western Canada. Now, let's get back to our news here. Yes, we turn now to Ottawa. I know everybody's always so excited when we talk about Ottawa and politicians. I don't get it, but all right, maybe that's an overstatement. But where the federal government today unveiled a sweeping economic strategy designed to, in the Prime Minister's words, get back to building things in this country. It's a multi-billion-dollar plan to fast-track major projects, a direct response to what the government sees as a fundamental rupture in the global economy, driven by an aggressive America First policy south of the border. But the government's vision of Canada's future has one glaring omission, and it's sparking fierce debate about what kind of economy we're building and who is going to get left behind. Now, of course, we're looking at oil. Yes, the building of Canada's future, but without oil and leaving that industry behind. The plan is ambitious, enabled by legislation, Bill C-5, that was pushed through Parliament at lightning speed. The government has identified 5 major projects it deems in the national best interest, projects that will now get a fast-tracked approval. The goal is to inject $60 billion into the Canadian economy and create tens of thousands of jobs. Now, let's take a look at some of these projects. We are talking about the LNG Canada expansion in Kitimat, British Columbia for energy and natural gas. Also, small modular reactor in Darlington, Ontario for nuclear energy. Copper mine in Saskatchewan, and that's, of course, for critical minerals, the Red Chris mine expansion in British Columbia, once again, critical mineral mining. And then, of course, the Port of Montreal expansion in Montreal, Quebec, and that is a part of the infrastructure and trade expansion. Now, the list signals a dramatic strategic pivot. It's a bet on liquefied natural gas, nuclear power, as well as critical minerals for the EV supply chain and global trade. But what's not is a bet on oil. For the first time in recent memory, a federal list of nation-building projects does not include a single new oil pipeline. For decades, pipelines have been central battlefield or the central battleground of the Canadian economy and for its policies. By excluding them, Carney's government is attempting to sidestep that fight and redefine what a national interest project looks like in the 21st century. Now, the move is a high-stakes gamble, and the government is signaling a shift away from traditional engine of the Western economy and towards industries aligned with the global energy transition. The expansion of the LNG Canada facility in Kitimat, for example, is a major nod to European allies desperate to wean themselves off other energy sources. Now, the entire initiative is a piece of defensive economic policy. It was conceived as a way to shore up Canada's economy against the tariff threats and protectionism of U.S. President Donald Trump. By fast-tracking projects that build domestic capacity and open new export markets, Canada is fighting for its economic sovereignty in a world where its closest ally has become its biggest economic threat. But the plan is already facing criticism from all sides. Alberta Premier Danielle Smith has so far been measured in her response to the pipeline omission, but the federal Conservatives are expected to launch a fierce political attack. Meanwhile, the speed of the new approval process under Bill C-5 has alarmed some Indigenous leaders who fear their communities will not be properly consulted. Environmental groups are also deeply skeptical, with Climate Action Network Canada warning the plan includes dangerous initiatives that further entrench us in Trump's dream of an uncompetitive, volatile, and fossil-fueled North American economy. Now, the Prime Minister is betting he can build a new Canadian economy faster than ever before. The question is whether or not he can do it without factoring the country in the process. Now, the government's ambitious construction plan leads directly to an enormous contradiction at the heart of its own policy. At the very moment it wants to build more, it is making it harder than ever to bring in the builders. In a stunning reversal of decades of policy, Canada is closing the door to foreign talent, leaving businesses scrambling and would-be Canadians with their dreams shattered. This, of course, is as we're talking about Canada reaping its welcoming of the world. For years, Brand Canada has been sold to the world as a promise of openness, a place to study, to work, and to build a new life. But in 2025, that brand is being systematically dismantled, driven by intense domestic pressure over housing shortages, strained public services, and of course, aging infrastructure from coast to coast to coast. The government has launched a two-front clampdown on immigration, targeting both the temporary foreign workers and international students, something that we've talked about in great discussion in the business world. This is a big concern for a lot of companies that have relied on the foreign workers, especially when you look at industries such as farming or hospitality, food services, and such, where there are just people not willing to do that work here in Canada for the wages that are offered. Of course, we also have to keep in mind that the moratorium on processing applications for low-wage jobs in the region, where unemployment is over 6%, and that is, of course, looking at the numbers. And also to look at that as well, they are also looking at a higher wage threshold for the skilled positions that some of the foreign workers fill as well. This is to try to alleviate some of the concerns that people have when it comes to businesses actually hiring foreign workers to take positions away from Canadians who are capable, educated, and ready to take on those roles. What we've seen is some abuse of the temporary worker programs and the other visa programs. And what was happening is that they were ads placed in a lot of different locations, whether it's online, traditional newspapers, and so forth. And the companies were getting mass amounts of resumes. But what they would do at that point is actually ignore a lot of the resumes and a lot of the Canadians that were applying, and then report to the government that they've spent this amount on advertising, but they couldn't find anybody that fit the specific role that they were looking to fill, or the roles in multiples. And that has become a problem because they have taken advantage of the worker visa program and the temporary foreign worker programs to instead bring in foreign workers at much lower rates. So a part of the higher wage threshold is aiming to fix that as well. We also have the major concerns of different corporations and individuals that take advantage of and abuse the workers, whether it is holding back wages or whether or not it is putting them in unsafe working environments and threatening to send them back home if they file any complaints through the official channels. So again, there's a lot to be fixed there, but the biggest part of it is the responsible immigration programs that need to be brought in. There's a lot of benefit to having foreign workers enter Canada the right way. Having the immigration growth is very important to Canada, as well as population growth. But again, it has to be done in a responsible and ethical way, that we are not just bringing people in and then subjecting them to poverty or poverty level incomes with the cost of living, the lack of housing, and so much more. It also, of course, has an impact on the availability of doctors and other services when we are already suffering shortages. So it's something that the government is cracking down on. And again, nearly 80% of student applications are from India, who was a top source country, have been rejected. And that is because of the fact that they've cut back on the visa numbers. Also, the financial requirements for students have doubled to over $20,000, and the fast-track application stream has been shut down. So again, it shows how this is having unintended consequences of trying to adjust and make up for the over allowance of the visas in the past and not keeping up the infrastructure. So it's, again, the consequences are rippling across Canada. Industries from agriculture to healthcare, which are structurally dependent on foreign labor, are facing crucial shortages, whether it's the cleaners in the hospitals, the doctors, the nurses, the healthcare aides, and so forth. It is having a major impact that, again, is one of the unintended impacts, and it needs to be revisited to make sure that we do it responsibly, but that we have the people we need to continue running programs and the different facilities. Now, it also creates a massive self-inflicted problem for the government's own agenda. How do you build $60 billion worth of new mines, power plants, and ports when you have just choked off a primary source of the labor required to build them? Again, something that we've seen in the U.S. with the crackdown on migrants and even legal immigrants in the U.S., that crackdown, we've seen the impacts in a lot of construction and other related industries. So that's where we're at this time. We need to really take a look at what we can do to make sure that we stay on track while doing it responsibly. Now, once again, the world has, of course, been remembering the 24th anniversary of the September 11th terrorist attacks. It's a day seared into the global consciousness, a day for solemn reflection of the 2,977 lives lost in New York and at the Pentagon, and then, of course, the field in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. But this year's anniversary unfolded in America marked by fresh wounds and deep political division, a tension that was impossible to ignore even on this most sacred of days. As people gathered at Ground Zero in Manhattan, the ceremony began, as it always does, with a moment of silence at 8:46 a.m., the moment the first plane struck the North Tower. And then the reading of the names, a heartbreaking ritual where families share memories of their lost loved ones. Now, for the families, the grief remains raw in a personal, very personal, tragic, scar that will never heal. Zoe Doyle spoke of the nonprofit her family created in her father Frank's honor, which now builds schools in South Africa. Melissa Poulis, whose husband Edward died in the towers, spoke through tears about the milestones he has missed, as two of their three children are now getting married. And she went on to say that you can't walk your princess down the aisle. We will always say your name. Now, their pain is a constant private grief that stands in stark contrast to the way the memory of 9/11 is now used in the public and political square. For a new generation of Americans, it is history. It is not a lived experience. In his official Patriot Day proclamation, President Trump even encouraged young people to ask their families and their neighbors to recount their memories of that day. But this year, the Day of Unity was pierced by the sound of modern political discord. The ceremonies took place under heightened security just one day after the assassination of conservative activist Charlie Kirk in Utah. The Pentagon, at the ceremony honoring the 184 people killed there, President Donald Trump chose to merge the memory of 9/11 with the politics of today. In his address, the president announced that he would be posthumously awarding Charlie Kirk the Presidential Medal of Freedom, calling him a giant of his generation. We won't even get me started on my personal opinions of giving him that award. I think it's just beyond disgusting, but we'll leave it at that. But today, as one nation, of course, the U.S. renewed their sacred vow that they will never forget September 11th, 2001. Here in Canada, we also defy the fear, endure the flames that emerge from a crucible of every hardship, stronger, prouder, and greater than ever before. The president's speech was filled with vows of peace through strength and a promise that any enemy who spills American blood will face the full wrath of American justice. But his decision to use the 9/11 memorial to honor a divisive political figure was a stark symbol of how a day once meant to transcend politics has become yet another venue for the politicians. It suggests the unifying power of a terrible day has faded, unable to bridge the deep chasm of a polarized America. Now, the anniversary of an attack that reshaped global security comes at a time of rising international tension. A new report from the World Economic Forum has identified state-based armed conflict as the single biggest global risk for 2025, ahead of extreme weather and geoeconomic confrontations. We did see a vivid example of that risk today with Poland's Prime Minister Donald Tusk reported that a huge number of Russian drones have violated again Polish airspace. He said any drones that posed a direct threat were shot down. It's a clear instance of what security experts call gray zone warfare, hostile acts designed to test defenses and sow instability without triggering an open conflict. Analysts at the Stimson Center warn of a world facing multiple cascading crises, including the risk of a rogue America retreating from global institutions, escalating conflict in the Middle East, and rising tensions with China and Mexico. It's a world on edge, grappling with new threats while still living with the memories of old ones. That is where we are at when we're looking at the news, folks. As we began the night with the story of a single punch on a Lethbridge street, an act of violence that has left a family shattered and a community searching for answers, we end tonight realizing how interconnected our world has become. With this end of the news report, we will move into our feature section talking about AI in business. But before we do that, we've also looked at the violence in Lethbridge as a local tragedy, but it also speaks to a broader societal fragility. The multi-billion-dollar infrastructure plan in that same city is a local solution, but it's driven by the global challenges of climate change and economic competition. Meanwhile, we looked at Ottawa, where the government is making a massive bet on the economic future, a direct reaction to the actions of an unpredictable ally in Washington. And it tries to build a more resilient Canada, but it's closing the doors to the very people that have helped to build this country for generations, a move that will have consequences both at home and abroad. And in New York and Washington, we saw how the memory of the global trauma, a day that once brought nations together, is now being reshaped by the divisions of the present. From a stolen bicycle in Alberta to nation-building plans in Ottawa to a solemn anniversary in New York, the stories are different, but the theme is the same. We live in a time of profound disruption, where a local event can have global echoes and global pressures can be felt on a city street. Navigating that reality is the challenge of our current times. Once again, you are watching Primetime Live, and we again thank our sponsor, Carry Movers Limited, for sponsoring this episode. Yet once again, if you are looking for long-distance movers in Western Canada, you can reach out to them via their website at www.carrymovers.com. That's K-A-R-Y, movers.com. You can find them online and get rates and quotes as you wish. Now, let's take a look at AI and how people are being really divided on their use of it, whether it's bringing it into the workplace or whether or not it's looking at your bank statements and your budgeting plans that are AI assisted through many of the banking apps. Now, the biggest technological gold rush since the internet, AI is promising to revolutionize everything from how we shop to how we heal to how we build our world. It's very much a polarizing issue in some regards because of the safety, the legality, the liabilities, and of course the data risks that come with it. Now, businesses are investing billions of dollars chasing unprecedented efficiency and innovation, but for every success story, there is a cautionary tale. A hidden cost, a dark side where algorithms meant to help instead harm, where the ghost in the machine reflects our own worst biases. Tonight, we're going to investigate the good, the bad, and the ugly of AI in business, and is it a key to our future or a Pandora's box of liability that we're not ready to handle? This, again, is the big question that people are concerned about. But to understand the AI frenzy, you have to understand the results. For a growing number of companies, AI isn't a far-off concept. It's a powerful engine driving real measurable growth. The first and most dramatic impact is on the bottom line through a concept we're calling the AI efficiency dividend. Now, of course, there are concerns by people in different industries that the AI could kick them out of their positions, take away jobs. But again, people had the same concerns when it came to the computer. But instead, what happened is that they're just created a new opportunity of employment, in the computer technology world. People found that so much as the computers replaced, it also helped people to re-educate themselves or to expand and use the computer as a tool for efficiency and not so much as a replacement. And I think that is something that we're going to see in AI as well. But of course, it's much more advanced than the computer was. Now, in the world of manufacturing and logistics, where every second and every cent counts, of course, AI is a game changer. Take industrial giants like Siemens and General Electric. They use AI for what's called predictive maintenance, and this also goes for automotive manufacturers as well. They analyze the data from sensors on everything from factory machines to jet engines to car engines, and so much more. Now, the AI can predict failures before they happen, allowing for a scheduled maintenance to be brought forward if needed, instead of a big, costly, unplanned shutdown. Now, this, of course, if you look at companies like Pepsi and Frito-Lay plants, the approach has saved an astonishing 4,000 hours of production capacity. So again, that is 4,000 hours of production that they would not have had if they weren't utilizing the technology in that manner. Now, when we look at supply chain management and just the supply chain overall, automaker Toyota has empowered its factory workers to develop and deploy their own machine learning models, leading to a reduction of over 10,000 man-hours lost per year. And logistics leader DHL uses AI-powered bots in its warehouses that can sort over 1,000 small parcels an hour with 99% accuracy. Meanwhile, UPS is tackling a modern menace, and that is package theft. Its AI system, Delivery Defense, analyzes stored data to assign a delivery confidence score to each address. So at-risk packages are proactively rerouted to secure locations, enhancing customer trust and cutting losses. Yes, it can be an inconvenience for those who are in communities where there tends to be a lot of package thefts and porch pirates, as they're called. But again, it's all about trying to increase efficiency while reducing losses and costs associated with that. Now, when we look at this, there are other uses and other ways that it is fundamentally reshaping the relationship between businesses and their customers. It's creating a new hyper-personalized economy, and that can be seen through your cell phone. You are finding that you are receiving ads that are very specific to what you search for online, what you may get emails about. And again, it just seems like every time that you type anything into your phone or your computer, it's tracking. And it does that. Now, if you've ever wondered and been amazed at how Netflix or Spotify seem to know exactly what you want to watch or listen to next, you've experienced a recommendation engine at work. These AI systems are analyzing billions of data points every day, and they are trying to keep user habits at the front of the technology to keep you engaged, boost your subscription retention rate, and of course, your total online time consumption. Now, for a company like Amazon, these AI-driven product recommendations are not just a feature, they're a core part of the business, and reportedly, it drives as much as 35% of their revenue. Keep in mind as well that also AI is revolutionizing customer service. The Australian financial services company Zip deploys an AI autopilot to handle over 2,000 routine customer inquiries a month. It's achieved a 93.6% full resolution rate and a staggering 473% return on investment, all while freeing up its human agents to focus on the most complex and sensitive customer issues. Now, similarly, Dutch Airlines KLM used AI to manage its social media messages, speeding up customer interactions by 50%. Now, let's go back to that for a quick second and we'll go off topic here. But Dutch Airlines KLM, I personally would not, name my airline Killam. But it's the Royal Airlines, Killam Airlines, a flight 50-50. Maybe you'll make it, maybe you won't. But hey, that's just me talking. I don't know why they chose that, but obviously it is what it is. All right, but let's get back to more, exciting promises of AI and its ability to act as a partner in human ingenuity. Excuse me. It's accelerating innovation in fields that were once bottlenecked by time and computational limits. The amazing amount of data that it can process within a split second, let alone the hours, days, months, or even years that it could have taken in the past by humans to do it, is just down to milliseconds. It's amazing. An example of this would be the aerospace industry, and that is Airbus using generative AI to rethink how planes are built. Yes, the engineers input the parameters, materials, weight, strength, and the AI generates thousands of optimized design options. This process cut the time for complex aerodynamics predictions from 1 hour down to just 30 milliseconds, allowing engineers to test 10,000 more design iterations than was previously possible. The same acceleration is happening in medicine. Pharmaceutical companies like Roche and Chiesi Pharmaceutica are also using AI to automate the evaluation of drug compounds. This allows their chemists to move quickly and identify and prioritize the most promising candidates for new treatments, potentially bringing life-saving, not threatening, but bringing life-saving drugs to market faster at a lower cost. From finance, where JP Morgan's AI tool can analyze legal contracts in seconds instead of thousands of hours, to tech, where AI helps Facebook find and fix bugs in its own code. The story is the same. AI is amplifying the human experience. However, there is also the bad. Of course, you knew that had to come, right? Now, we've seen the promise of AI, billions of dollars in savings, revolutionary products, and delighted customers. But the narrative has also fueled a massive wave of corporate investment. But behind the headlines, a far more troubling story is now unfolding. For the vast majority of companies, the AI revolution has been a bust. Recent bombshell study from MIT revealed a shocking statistic that despite tens of billions of dollars in enterprise investment, 95% of generative AI projects have failed to produce any measurable business return. Other research from Rand Corporation and industry analyst Gartner supports this, placing the overall failure rate for AI projects at a staggering 80+%, twice the rate of traditional IT projects. Now, these aren't small experimental failures. One airline spent $1 million on an AI tool to optimize passenger boarding, only to find it made no difference and had to be shelved. This is a graveyard of abandoned prototypes and broken promises, costing businesses billions in lost resources and revenue. So why is the failure rate so high? That is a big question. And the investigations have found that it's not only the technology that's failing, but the strategy behind it. The number one reason projects fail is stunningly simple. It's bad data. Now, the house rule in AI is absolute. Garbage in, garbage out. We've all heard that for decades. And an AI system learns from the data that it's fed. If that data is biased, incomplete, or simply wrong, the model will apply those flaws, leading to a skewed outcome. Many organizations caught up in the hype drastically underestimate the immense cost and the effort required for proper data collection, cleaning, and labeling. Now, a second major cause of failure is what some insiders call AI syndrome. Now, this is where they are just adopting the technology as a solution in search of a problem. They bring it in without a clear business case and defined success matrix. These projects are doomed to drift aimlessly until their funding is cut. Plain and simple. It's not rocket science for the most part. But as one McKinsey report notes, the real value of AI comes from fundamentally rewiring how a company runs, not just plugging in a trendy new tool for the new year. Now, even when AI projects do make it out of the lab and into the real world, they can stumble in embarrassing and sometimes very dangerous ways. Let's take a look at June 2024 when McDonald's was forced to end a high-profile test of an IBM-powered AI for taking drive-through orders. The system repeatedly misrepresented customer requests, and that led to frustration, incorrect orders, and long delays as it just continued to misinterpret what the customer wanted. Now, more concerning is a phenomenon known as AI hallucinations, where a model confidently presents a false information as fact. We've seen this with even an airline that had AI chatbots responding to inquiries by customers, and when it didn't find a policy that dealt with the customer's issue, it created one of its own, which ended up leading to a very costly and lengthy lawsuit against the Canadian airline company. So again, it is not to be used without monitoring and very close oversight. Now, of course, when Google rolled out its new AI overview feature, it was met with ridicule and alarm after it began generating absurd recommendations like adding glue to pizza or claiming the US president was Muslim. In the world media, the Business Insider had to retract 40 personal essays after discovering that they were likely AI generated and contained fabricated bylines and details. These aren't just glitches, they represent a fundamental operation risk where AI can actively spread misinformation. Now imagine if you're using chatbots and the chatbot starts just creating new policies, new pricing, new rules, and putting that out to your customers or your suppliers or anybody else in the public eye. This could be detrimental and cost you millions of dollars in losses. Now, AI systems thrive on vast data sets. This is creating a huge, centralized, and highly attractive target for cyber criminals. The more personal data that an AI needs to be effective, the greater the potential damage from a breach. Now, this creates a nightmare for legal compliance. Regulations and regulators, such as Europe's GDPR, give individuals the right to be forgotten. But once a person's data is deeply embedded in the complex web of a trained AI model, completely erasing it is nearly impossible, putting companies at major risk for fines or other liabilities and legal claims. Let's take it a step further in how Doge has been handling information in the United States. Now, as Doge has been using AI to scan different government databases, it not only put risk to the American personal information, but also to Canadians, to Europeans, or anyone else that is sharing a tax treaty with the American government. So, for example, with our company that I own several, and one of them is an AI company. We deal with agri-tech and trying to deal with the H5N1 avian influenza. Now, when we take a look at the overall projects and using AI, we source out very ethical and responsible data sources. However, with that said, there are a lot of companies out there that are not doing that effectively or responsibly. And going back to what's happening with the US is that we have to file W-8 forms and tax forms, not as a partner, treaty partner country with the US. So they have some information on our company, on myself personally, as well as financials and other things that they could be spreading out through Doge, and Doge could be using to reprogram or to teach their AI systems with all of this data. Now, that would, of course, give them an unfair advantage over other companies and competition, but even more so, it puts at risk not only Americans' personal data, but that of other people and companies from around the world. That's why I bring up the US government example, is because that is a very high risk. Now, the investigation also reveals that these problems and project failures and privacy risks, of course, that's often two symptoms of the same underlying disease, and that is a lack of data discipline. An organization that doesn't have the governance to ensure that its data is clean and relevant for an operational project is the same organization that will inevitably use biased or compromised data if that project ever goes live. The bad leads directly to the ugly, and the ugly is where the real damage begins. When you look at it, of course, we're talking about the ghost in the machine, how AI is systematically discriminating against people, and the courtroom battles that could change everything. Now, as we've seen, how AI projects can fail, costing billions, but the true cost of getting AI wrong isn't measured in dollars. It's measured in lost opportunities, unfair treatment, and real human harm. This is the ugly side of AI, where the flawed code doesn't just produce an error, it actually perpetuates injustice at a very unprecedented scale. Now, let's go back to 2014, when Amazon set out to build an AI recruiting tool, and they wanted to automate their hiring process. But they soon discovered a disturbing flaw because the AI was trained on a decade of resumes submitted to the company, which were overwhelmingly from men. So it taught itself that male candidates were preferable. The system began systematically penalizing resumes that included the word women's and downgraded graduates from all women's colleges. Amazon, of course, ultimately had to scrap the entire project. Now, this is not an isolated incident. Bias is now being discovered in nearly every high-stakes decision-making process powered by AI. An investigation by the news organization The Markup into mortgage lending found that even when controlled for 17 different financial factors, lenders were 80% more likely to reject Black applicants than similar white applicants. It's a phenomenon known as digital redlining. A UC Berkeley study found that Black and Latino borrowers were charged hundreds of millions of dollars more in interest each year than their credit equivalent white counterparts. Now, this issue gained public attention when the Apple Card, managed by Goldman Sachs, faced scrutiny for offering men credit limits up to 20 times higher than their wives, even when the women had better credit scores and shared financial accounts. Now, in healthcare, a widely used algorithm affecting over 200 million patients in the US in their hospitals was found to be less likely to recommend extra medical care for Black patients than for white patients who were equally sick. The reason? Well, the AI used healthcare spending as a proxy for need, failing to account for systematic inequities and in access of care or access to care. Now, for years, these biases were hidden and they were kept from the public, but now they're at the center of a new wave of landmark lawsuits that are establishing a legal precedent and holding companies liable for the actions of their algorithms. Now, the most significant case, excuse me, folks, is Mobley versus Workday Inc. And this was a class action lawsuit filed on behalf of potentially hundreds of millions of job applicants. The plaintiff, Derek Mobley, an African-American man over 40 with a disability, alleges that Workday's AI-powered screening tools unlawfully discriminate based on race, age, and disability. In a groundbreaking ruling, a federal judge allowed the case to proceed, stating that AI vendors like Workday can be held liable as agents of the employers using their tools. Now, the court warned that drawing an artificial distinction between human and AI decision makers would potentially gut anti-discrimination laws. So again, it is a very big issue that is very, very scary when you look at the outcomes. But we are running out of time, folks, so we will touch on the last parts of it here quickly, and that is if you are looking to bring AI processes into your business to make it more streamlined, to make it more efficient, or to save money. There are some amazing ways to do so, but there are also a lot of risks involved in that. If you have questions about that, of course, I'm always happy to answer that. As I said, I do own an AI development company. I'm very familiar with the regulations. But one of the big things you also want to keep in mind, especially if you are dealing with private information in Canada, that data needs to remain in Canada. You cannot have that stored on computers in other countries, such as medical information for medical practices and so forth. If you have any questions, you're more than welcome to post them here, or you can email us for more information on the AI implementation and liability reduction within your company. You can email me directly at James W. Cousineau, Cousineau, @gmail.com. Once again, thank you very much for tuning in to Primetime Live here on Jess FM and Jess TV from Lethbridge, Alberta, Canada. We are excited to have you as a part of the audience. We look forward to seeing you again next Thursday, 8 o'clock p.m. Mountain Standard Time. If you're watching this rebroadcast, by all means, feel free to put your comments in the comment section. Like, share, and follow. But don't forget to send it out to your friends and make sure they know about us as well. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in yet once again to Primetime Live. We'll see you next week.